It invited me into this constant conversation with my body. What do I need right now? How am I feeling right now? What is my body communicating to me? And how can I move with that? Not wanting it to be any different than it is, not wanting it to change. At the beginning, I came into that with that warrior spirit that, okay, we're going to fix this. What do I have to do? Give me steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll do it perfectly. Like, I'll do it better than anyone has ever done it. Because that's how I would go about my life. Give me the assignment and I'll do it perfectly. But of course, I found out pretty quickly that in healing work, that doesn't really work. Just letting go of that pressure and having that daily moment to moment conversation. Okay, how am I feeling? How can I adjust? And realizing that healing wasn't necessarily going to be a destination or an end point and then everything would go back to the way it was. It was just a whole new way of living and starting to realize that I probably will never go back to who I was before and life will never be the same again. It's just a new way of relating to myself, to the world, to what I'm doing, and to my body, a whole new way of living life that was not necessarily ever going to end. It was just going to be a day-to-day thing.
So the big question is this. We know spontaneous remissions and so-called miracle cures exist. We also know they aren't so spontaneous after all. I'm living proof of this, having cured my quote-unquote incurable illness. There's something to how this happens. So how do we, as humans with chronic symptoms, tap into this so-called miraculous healing capacity? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Dr. Erin Hayford, and welcome to the Sacred Illness Podcast. Before we begin today's episode, just my standard medical disclaimer. This podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. The content should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional regarding any medical concerns. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Sacred Illness Podcast. Today I have Daniëlle, originally from the Netherlands, currently living in Bali. A few episodes ago, I interviewed someone in Australia, so it was a similar thing where it's evening for me on a Tuesday and it's morning for Daniëlle on a Wednesday. So just fun to be crossing over vast amounts of land and ocean to be making these connections and bringing stories from literally across the globe for this podcast. And even as I'm saying that, I think it just really helps to highlight how this is a human experience. These things that we share on this podcast, it's not related to where we live or what culture we're in. Like, this is a universal human experience to have these illnesses, painful experiences, these traumatic experiences, whatever they might be, that help us to reconnect to ourselves. So that all being said, Daniëlle is here today to share her story with us. I was just talking to Daniëlle before I hit record about how a couple of episodes ago I talked to Andrew, who is a bicyclist, and Danielle's story also begins with a bicycle accident. It was really a turning point for her in her own healing journey. So we'll get all into that. Welcome, Daniëlle. Thank you again for being here, for waking up early to get on the show with us today. I'm so excited to talk to you and to hear your story today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My pleasure.
Absolutely. Yes. So let's get into it. I would love to hear maybe wherever you want to start. I always like for folks to find where that starting point for you is. Is it starting with the bicycle accident and then we work back from there? Wherever you want to jump in, where does this story start for you, that this journey that you've been on came from?
Let's start with the bicycle accident. That was a wake up moment. Looking back, it's like an entire life of things adding up, but we can get to that later. This happened over 5 years ago. At the time I was living in the Netherlands, I had one of those lives where from the outside it looked picture perfect. I had my own home, I owned my own home, I had my corporate job, I had this vibrant social life. But on the inside, I truly felt like I either was dying or was already dead. Like, I was not in a happy space at all, but I had no idea how to change that. And then one night I was going to meet up with a friend for dinner. I was going there riding my bike because it's the Netherlands. We go everywhere by bike.
Yeah.
So it was a familiar route, nothing special about it. But then I got into this accident with pedestrians. It was just a very unfortunate hit, and the way I came down on the concrete on the street, it left me with broken bones and also with a very heavy concussion.
Wow.
That, at the time I was told, rest, you'll be back on your feet in a few weeks, it'll be fine. But that didn't happen at all. Like, I wasn't healing at all. The broken bones, I had a couple surgeries and that fixes that part of it. But then the other side of it was so much more impactful for me because it took about 2.5 years of rehab to really get back on my feet and be able to function again in this world we're living in. It led to me having to make so many changes in how I was living life and viewing myself.
I think it's fascinating how a lot of these stories begin in that way, where it's like people have said those words so many times, like on the surface, it looked like this ideal life. And for all intents and purposes, it's like, I should have been happier, felt this way. It was a good life. And yet there was this feeling of depression, anger, sadness, disconnection, numbness, etc. I guess I'm curious for you. You get into this bike accident, you are literally knocked off your feet, you're in rehab for years after this. What was your initial reaction to it, and how were you initially relating to it, and when did it switch into recognizing that there was more to it than that?
Yeah, it was a very interesting, fascinating experience, to be honest, because when the accident happened, the moment the side of my head hit the pavement, and there was literally this flash of light in front of my eyes. And I went into that accident feeling super depressed and honestly not even wanting to live anymore. I remember having to really talk myself into going to this dinner. And I was like, okay, if you don't want to get up and go out for yourself, at least do it for your friend. You're meeting up with his friend, so show up for him. That was what got me out of the door. There was this flash of light, and suddenly there was this reconnection with this inner fire of wanting to live.
Wow.
Almost like this warrior feeling of, no, this is not the end. This is not ending here. We're going to overcome this. But that was like a split-second moment. And then after that, my body's intelligence took over. I truly believe I went into shock. I felt very numb. I wasn't able to respond to what was happening or express how I was feeling, which also led to people, including myself, not realizing how serious it really was. So getting to the hospital and not really being taken seriously or taken a good look at. I was just sent home. They didn't even notice that my leg was broken. We found that out weeks later. It was a really layered experience. There was a reconnection, but at the same time, it became clear that, okay, this is going to be a long road back to health.
Yeah. And it was that inability to communicate or share what was going on because of the shock of the injury, or was that part of you not having a voice or not expressing yourself or asking for needs? Was that part of the pattern, I guess, is the question.
Oh, 100%. Because I also felt very defeated. I felt like it was a setback at the time of this hopelessness and I don't know anymore what to do or how to keep on going. So that was definitely a thing. And throughout the years of rehab, I had to learn to communicate, to speak my truth, to ask for help. At the time, I was living alone. I was not in a relationship. My family lived far away. This is also that I want to emphasize what makes something a traumatic experience for one person and not necessarily for the other person. For me, a big part of it was also being alone in that, not feeling supported in that, not feeling seen in that. Part of that is the pattern throughout my life of not letting myself be seen, not connecting to myself, not connecting to others, because that felt super unsafe from experiences growing up. So it opened up a big can of worms.
Yeah.
I had to sift and sort through all of that shit that at the time I wasn't aware of. I didn't know anything about the nervous system. I didn't really know what trauma was or what complex trauma really was, which is what I had to dive into and connect to those younger parts of me, the child parts of me who were never seen, who were never truly connected to, and start there.
Is it fair to say that the therapy and rehab itself is what began to heal, almost like it forced you to start to heal those things because you had to speak up and
Yeah.
advocate for yourself. Interesting.
Yeah. And even throughout that, I wasn't aware of that at all. I felt there was some part of me that very early on in the process felt like the Western medicine way is not going to help me here. So I pretty early on felt like I need to venture out and explore different paths. And luckily, I crossed path with an osteopath who actually had a lot of experiences with cases like mine. He was the one who told me for the first time, hey, it seems like your body doesn't feel safe to heal. There's no reason for you to be stuck where you're at. If your body doesn't feel safe to heal, it's going to stay there. What is the cause of that? What is underneath that? Have you ever looked at any trauma? Have you looked at that stuff? And I was like, no, I have not. But I could also sense that he was onto something. I'm grateful for him for putting me on that path pretty early on.
That's huge. That's everything, right? Like, I think that's truly everything. It comes back to safety. And if our body doesn't feel safe, then it can't shift out of a state of survival, which is not going to allow anything to heal, right? Our body can't heal in survival mode, and it gets stuck in those trauma patterns and pain patterns. There always seems to be this person that comes along in someone's journey who just says something like that, or just is like a little nudge, and it's all you need to open up to this entirely new way of being in relationship with it. So it sounds like even though you hadn't been doing trauma work or anything like that, it sounds like there was like a resonance or a knowing in you of, yeah, there's probably something there. What did that look like for you? Like, where did it go from there once he introduced those concepts to you?
I went through this exploratory phase, trying different modalities, trial and error, lots of error, doing too much too soon, and a lot of what felt like relapses, thinking it was going better. But it is what introduced me to breath work at first. Started with way too much, way too soon. But after a while, found a softer, safer way to work with that. And then also somatic tracking, somatic experiencing, which at first felt just like boring work. That was the story I was telling myself. This is boring. Nothing is happening. When actually a lot was happening, because that's what allowed me to get a sense of what safety even felt like in my body. What made me realize that throughout my entire life, I don't think I ever really felt that. My entire life up to that point had been this anxious, constantly scanning, looking around. Am I safe? Can I exist? Am I allowed to be here? That was pretty much the first 30 years of my life. So I got to unpack all of that through a lot of somatic nervous system work and working with where I was at the moment. And then when that foundation of safety started to appear, that's when I also started to be able to access these child parts of me and start to work with, what have I been missing out on, and how can we reconnect and bring all of that into where I'm at right now and show them that right now it is safe and I can connect. That's why I'm here. That's why we're in this life, on this path.
That's beautiful. I think that's such a helpful way to talk about this work too, because when we are in survival mode a lot of the time, or chronically in survival mode, when we start to do healing work, we want it to be big. Our nervous system needs bigness to feel anything, right? Because survival mode is big. We have all this cortisol stress hormones pumping through our system. If the therapy is really quiet and subtle, our nervous system is, I need more than that. It doesn't feel like enough. But yeah, somatic work is so subtle and gentle. It's like your nervous system has been screaming and somatic work is whispering, trying to get your nervous system to quiet down so it can hear and come down to this more quiet, calm level. And that feeling, right? It's like you have to have that somatic experience of safety. Once you start to feel that, like you said, then all of these younger versions of you who have been traumatized or who are holding on to wounding can start to feel safe to come forward. So yeah, I just really appreciate the way you laid that out, because it is this gentle unfolding that happens. And I think that's really important for people to hear that way that this can open up in a stepwise fashion. Safety is first. It's establishing that safe connection with yourself. Did you continue in that vein of somatic work and breath work that led you deeper into this? Did you start to pull in other modalities at that point as your capacity expanded? What did that look like?
I had been practicing yoga for years already. I started with that, almost viewing it as just another way of working out. I was into heavy weightlifting as well, so I felt like that was just a good counter to stretch my body. It was more of a physical workout to me. But throughout this process, I started to get into letting that lead into more somatic movement, intuitive movement, organic movement, and really working with my body. What really worked for me is that I didn't have to put language to my experiences. I could just allow my body to unwind and move through layers that were ready to be unwound. It went through breathwork, somatic experiencing into somatic movement. That is what I stayed with at that point. I felt like I found the modalities that worked for me. Throughout the years of exploring different avenues, I also found that pulling in too many modalities also didn't work for me, because there was another way of overwhelming the system, and also another way of feeling like I have to do more or experience more or learn more. And I really had to change that narrative as well, because I came from the narrative, oh, if I just work hard enough, I'll be good enough. If I just learn more, I'll be good enough. So really having to change that narrative, that entire conversation around worthiness and wholeness, and I don't need to do more. I'm already allowed to exist. And to circle back to the concussion symptoms, like post-concussion syndrome, it forced me, especially in the beginning, I could not tolerate any sensations at all. So no sound, no light, no people around me, no movement. It was pretty extreme in the sense that all I could do was sleep. I slept for 18 hours a day. I would get up, make myself some food, and then go back to bed. I was literally forced into silence, into nothingness. I had to let go of my job. I had to let go of that social life. I had to let go of all the things that I had this perfectly curated identity around. It felt like death. I had to let go of everything I identified with and everything I thought made me a good person. But now I look back on that and I feel, oh, that was such a gift. It was so hard. It was so hard and so difficult. And it was such a gift because I needed to let go of all of that. I was forced into silence, into my body, to find that, oh, I actually don't need any of that stuff. I don't need any more. I actually need a lot less.
Yeah.
I need less of everything that I'd been doing.
It's so fascinating. Yesterday, this exact conversation happened. We were saying this may not apply to everyone, but I do feel like there is something to this. If we're in survival mode or running on old programs, there's usually some story of not being enough, not being worthy, like something lacking. I think we're perpetually in this state of how do I fill that void in me by doing more and getting the title and getting the job or getting the money or having this or having some sort of, we're trying to pull in some external thing to make that emptiness or whatever it is, like that feeling of lacking. We're trying to fill it up from the outside. It does feel like so much of healing is about, if we just strip it all away, how can you feel safe and good in your own skin? Sure, you can add that stuff back on, but when you're approaching it from this place of I'm worthy and enough just as I am, how does that change what you then need from the outside? Do you need that stuff anymore? People need money to survive, but to the extent that we're striving for, maybe not. I'm curious, how did that death look for you? Obviously, you were forced into it, which is what death is, right? You had to change. You didn't have a choice, which is so fascinating when illness, the goal of illness is to take us out of life, whether it's an accident of some kind or chronic illness or whatever. It's trying to take us away from the way of being that is no longer conducive to health and well-being. Was that a struggle for you? Was it clear? Were you making peace with it as you were laying in silence in your room? Like, how did that start to shift and change for you as you were processing that?
Such a good question. I remember it being almost like this oscillation between the two sides of it. One part of it was just like the human experience of this sucks so hard. And I don't know, it's too much. I felt like that a lot of the time too, like it is too much. I don't know how to hold this. There's not enough space for me to hold this, to be with all these feelings and sensations. That's why I mentioned when the accident happened and I had that flash of light and that warrior feeling of no, this is not the end. I feel like that was such a pivotal moment for me because throughout the process and every time I felt like I can do this is too much, I could reconnect back to that moment and feel like, okay, but I don't know where this part of me is right now, but I know it exists. I know there is this part of me that wants to live, and it feels like she has something to offer to this life. She wants to be here. And even though I may not be able to access her in this moment, I would still rely on, okay, it is there somewhere underneath this, and trusting that. So this whole process was also, if you can call it like a spiritual connection that I was missing before, it brought that connection back as well. And I feel like that's an important one to feel like you're part of something bigger, and that there's a reason that you're here and you're not alone in this experience, even though at the time you may be physically alone, like it may be just you in your room. For me, it was just me in my home, but feeling like there was something bigger that was holding me throughout, that made a world of difference.
Yeah.
If that answered your question.
It did. Yes, 100%. The podcast is called Sacred Illness, right? Because I think of it as a sacred invitation. It's a sacred sort of like hand coming down and creating some sort of interruption that's hard to ignore. You have to work to ignore it. That experience of having that flash of light and connecting with that life force is incredible, because it sounds like that was really important for you to have in your recovery. Okay, I know she exists. I felt that. There's no denying that she's there. And so clearly I need to get back to her. How do I find her? How do I reclaim her? And that's such a powerful thing. I think everyone needs to sink into that. That exists in all of us, right? We all have that inner fire, life force, like you described it. It's like this burning, beautiful force. And it doesn't have to mean it's like big or loud or anything like that, but it's just this being who is so alive and thriving. The only reason it starts to feel dead or dying is because we're layering stuff on top of it that's suffocating it, right? And so healing is about like, how do we unbury her and take her back out and let her thrive? You're doing this work, right? You're doing breath work, you're doing somatic work, getting into the somatic movement, all these amazing modalities, like really just reconnecting with yourself, and then obviously healing inner child, like limiting beliefs, peeling back all those layers. What's happening for you physically? What's your recovery looking like at that point as you start to incorporate those modalities?
As I started to feel more safe being in my body and taking up space through somatic work and breath work, I started to notice more space physically. Oh, my body is actually, there's quite a bit of space to take up here. I had never felt that before. Being able to take deep breaths was very new to me. So I started to take up more space physically, but also in life. And through that, my body's or nervous system's capacity to handle the sensations of life. So to be around noise or louder sounds, or to be around people. I was living downtown city center at the time. If I would go out and go for a walk, there would always be plenty of people and stuff happening around me. So that became my daily training moment. Just seeing, oh, okay, can I go for a walk for 10 minutes and feel okay? And also starting to feel the boundaries of my body. My body would at a certain point tell me, okay, this was enough for today. Time to go back home and go back inside. And of course, that goes like that, right? Some days I would be able to be outside for 30 minutes, and then the next day it was like, oh, this is not happening at all. So it just really invited me into this constant conversation with my body. What do I need right now? How am I feeling right now? What is my body communicating to me? And how can I move with that? Not wanting it to be any different than it is, not wanting it to change. At the beginning, I came into that process of with that warrior spirit that, okay, we're going to fix this. What do I have to do? Give me steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll do it perfectly. Like, I'll do it better than anyone has ever done it. Because that's how I would go about my life. Give me the assignment and I'll do it perfectly. But of course, I found out pretty quickly that in healing work, that doesn't really work. Just letting go of that pressure and having that daily moment-to-moment conversation. Okay, how am I feeling? How can I adjust? And realizing that healing wasn't necessarily going to be a destination or an end point and then everything would go back to the way it was. It was just a whole new way of living, and starting to realize that I probably will never go back to who I was before, and life will never be the same again. just a new way of relating to myself, to the world, to what I'm doing, and to my body. A whole new way of living life that was not necessarily ever going to end. It was just going to be a day-to-day thing.
Sacred Illness listeners, Dr. Erin here. If you're feeling inspired by the stories you're hearing in this podcast and you feel this inner nudge or pull of, I want to walk this kind of journey, or I want to learn the things that they're learning, or maybe you've been walking a similar path and you're thinking, I want to get past feeling stuck or lost or confused in my healing journey. When you're hearing these stories, you're seeing what's possible. You're hearing how people are moving through their illnesses to find deep purpose and meaning in their illness itself and also in their lives. And so if you are in that place of feeling inspired and ready to take your own healing to the next level, this is exactly what I created the Sacred Illness membership for. This membership is for people who are either completely new to this kind of healing work or have been doing it for a while and need more guidance and clarity for how to move through when they get stuck or when certain limiting beliefs come up or when they hit certain walls. This is a roadmap that's going to take you from point A to point Z with the clarity, the mindset, the energetics, and everything in between that you need to successfully walk the healing path. So what is this membership all about? It's not just another healing space that's all about random tools for relaxing your nervous system or repeating mantras that calm you down in the moment. Instead, the Sacred Illness membership is a step-by-step process that is going to teach you, why is your illness here? What is it asking of you? And what do you need to do about it? At the core of the membership is the Sacred Illness Blueprint. This takes you through what I call the hero's healing journey. Every stage of the healing journey is different, and the mindset, the energy, the tools needed are all different. And so the blueprint is walking you through each one of those steps, helping you understand where you are, why you're there, what to expect, and what to do to get through to the other side. So you never find yourself in that space again of, why am I sick? Why is nothing helping? Am I just going to be sick forever? It is really the core of the journey, and it is what is going to anchor you into your healing work time and time again. Every time you log in, it's going to tell you exactly where you're at and what you should be working on and how you're going to navigate the current phase of healing that you're in. In addition to the blueprint, we have the powerful Rewire Your Reality daily practice. This is something that we've offered as a standalone challenge, but it's also a core integrative piece of the membership itself. The healing journey at its core is about identifying how is my nervous system wired for survival versus wired for healing. The daily practice helps you really identify what are the ways in which my nervous system has patterns and beliefs and behaviors that are happening automatically without me knowing, that are creating conditions for illness that are showing up in my daily life. It's teaching you to identify those patterns and to rewire them in order to literally and physiologically shift your body into a place in which healing can actually occur. So those two things are really the core of the membership. But as you move through the blueprint, you continue to unlock what I like to call side quests. So if we think of the healing journey as sort of the main quest, we're trying to get to this root of why am I sick? What's the message? And what do I do about it? As you move through the blueprint, you get to unlock these other opportunities that will take you deeper into certain aspects of healing. So if, for example, you struggle with your relationship with food and eating and movement, there is an intuitive eating course that you can take that will guide you through the entire intuitive eating process. It will help you learn how and where and when you lost connection to your innate intuitive eater, how to reclaim that relationship and therefore heal your relationship with food. If you feel like you're someone who is constantly failing the healing journey or not getting the results that you want, or not feeling like you're able to take what you're learning and apply it in an embodied, living way, we have a course called Receiving Mode. And this is a really important side quest that you can go on off of the main blueprint journey that really teaches you the art of the healing journey, how to be in this place of action and also receiving. Because we can all get so stuck in this place of, I need to do more, I need to learn more, I need to see another doctor, I need to try another protocol. And we can get so in our head about it that we're missing the embodied reality that is healing, that we have to actually walk the talk. We have to practice what we preach. We have to be the person that we're trying to become. And so this course helps to teach what that feels like and how to shift into that space and that balance of doing and receiving so that we can actually reap the benefits of the work that we're doing. And if you are someone who's on a healing journey and you are also a healer, or you aspire to be in the healing profession at some point in your life, we have a course called the Wounded Healers course. This is a personal favorite of mine because as someone who is a wounded healer, I know how much we can have imposter syndrome at times or all the time in our work. We can feel like, who am I to help others when I myself still have symptoms and still struggle with health? This is the message of this work, that our illness is not a burden and not a barrier to being a healer, but is actually the invitation to step more deeply into this healing work. Through the work you do in the blueprint and inside your membership, you will learn with more and more clarity that your illness itself is actually the invitation to step more deeply into your purpose, to transform your suffering into your greatest gift, which is the gift that you give to others, to help them alchemize their pain, to understand their suffering, to see how the ways in which we are challenged in this life is an invitation to step more deeply into a space of meaning and into a space of health and well-being, and not the opposite. So this Wounded Healers course is really a way of passing on the sacred illness tradition to you that you can then pass on to your clients. And in this way, we send out these ripple effects throughout the world that really reinforces this new paradigm that illness is a sacred invitation to come back home to yourself. So this membership isn't about getting rid of your symptoms and suppressing them. It's about really learning how to connect to your body as a sacred guide, how to learn how to listen to what it's saying to you, how to be in a deep relationship with it, one of trust and one of reverence, understanding that your body is so wise and it contains everything that you need to heal yourself, to tap into your innate healing capacity, and more than anything else, to reconnect back to who you really are and who you were before life and trauma got in the way of that. So in addition to all of these incredible courses and the roadmap that will guide you step by step by step through the healing journey, ensuring your success, we have incredible support. There is a community forum where you can connect to the other members inside this space and find folks who are walking a similar journey to you. We also have monthly tea times where community members get together and can chat live through Zoom if you would like to meet face to face. We also have a whole healing resources library. So this is another entire resource for you to access for additional support like EFT tapping scripts or guided meditations, guided self-hypnosis tracks. We also have live monthly somatic yoga classes, and these are for folks who really want to get back into your body and have a more embodied approach to this work. They are taught every month by the incredible Daniëlle, who is a somatic informed yoga instructor, and all the recorded courses go into that healing resources library for reference if you can't make it to the live class. And one of our newest additions to the membership is a Q&A library. So as you're moving through the courses, you will have the opportunity to submit questions, and I will answer them live through video or through voice recording that is essentially giving you one-on-one coaching in this asynchronous way. The library of Q&A questions is going to be an ever-growing resource so that wherever you are in the healing journey, you can check in, see what questions people are asking about that particular part of the journey. You can learn from their experiences, feel validated in the fact that you're having similar questions or challenges, and you can help others by your questions, and they can learn from you and your process as well. From time to time, we have guest lecturers come in and teach workshops from anything ranging from astrology to somatic work and everything in between. And these just help us get a different perspective and be inspired about all the different ways in which healing can take place and all the different modalities that are out there. And twice a year, we have community-wide challenges. So this is a way in which we all come together and do the work together in a concerted way. These challenges serve to infuse a little more energy and excitement into the journey that you're currently on, or to just deepen and enrich your current process. So if you're ready to take the leap and join us inside the membership, click the link below in the show notes. As a thank you for being here, podcast listeners get 20% off your first month of the membership by using the coupon code PODCAST, all caps, PODCAST. I can't wait to see you inside the membership. I can't wait to support you on this next leg of your healing journey. And until then, let's get back to the podcast.
And was that a grief process for you? Was it relief knowing you couldn't, not that you couldn't go back, but that it wasn't really meant for you to go back to?
That was immediately what came up as I said that. It sounds so beautiful, and obviously that comes with a lot of grief, of letting go of what I felt like I had worked towards my entire life. And it also, what it brought up, the sense of, did I do life wrong? Did I get it wrong? The first 30, 35 years of my life, was it for nothing? Did I waste so much time chasing something that I wasn't meant to chase? So you can tell how deeply ingrained this narrative was of, there is something wrong with me and I have to do A, B, and C perfectly in order to earn my worth and to earn getting to exist in this life, this world. And that's a process. That's not something you wind or unlayer within 4 sessions.
No.
That's something you go back to over and over again. And still right now, every time there's a new chapter or a level up or a big change in my life, or I do something new that I haven't done before, that story pops up again. And it's just another invitation to go deeper.
Yeah. I think that helps to illustrate how healing is more of a spiral than a straight line. We all have a set of stories or beliefs we're working to heal. It comes back around, but it's different every time, right? Like we have the work that we've done on that story or belief from before. So we have a different relationship with it. We're continuing to grow with different situations, bring up different flavors or versions of it. It's an ongoing opportunity to anchor deeper and deeper into our worth and our value and our self every time it comes around. And I think that's a lot of the paradigm shifting. This is all a paradigm shift. A big one that I talk about is like challenges and what can feel like a setback or feel like an unfair whatever. These ways that we characterize things that come up in our life. It's really an opportunity. These challenges, hiccups, setbacks, and flare-ups of symptoms, etc., are opportunities for us to go deeper because we don't learn when things are going easy. We only learn in the face of challenges. It's about having that capacity to zoom out a little. And the more you do this kind of work, the more awareness you have of, oh, I know what this is, or I've done this before. This is a familiar path I've been down. Initially, it can feel disheartening, but I think people are unaware of, I was certainly unaware of how healing work often does bring up. I think it's inevitable that it will cause and create a lot of grief because it is a lot of letting go and realigning, right? It's inevitable. That is part of the process. And then continuing to reevaluate and realign as you go through these spirals of healing. And so you are 5 years out, right? So I'm guessing you've been around these spirals a few times by this point and like working through these layers for several years now.
Yeah.
And is that what brought you to Bali, or where are you at in your work and your journey at this point?
It is, yeah. Well, Bali has come in and out of my life. The first time I traveled here was 10 years ago. It was 10 years ago, and I was still very much in my corporate job and life. This was at a time where Instagram wasn't very big yet, but blogs were. A lot of people would write and read, myself included. So that's how I came across this young woman my age who was sharing about her travels to Bali. I read her story and I saw a picture of the famous yoga barn in Ubud for anyone who's traveled here. I saw that picture and I just got this sense of, oh, I need to go there. That's where I need to go. No idea why. I wasn't even practicing yoga at the time yet. Her story and her pictures got me to Bali, and I was here and I took my first yoga class ever. And it's not like then suddenly everything changed, but it planted this seed. I remember walking around here and being like, I wonder what it would be like if I were to live here. Life would be so different. And why am I even in this corporate job? Why are we living the way we're living? So it was this trip that started to bring up questions inside of me. And I started to question what I was doing and the environment I was in. Went back to the Netherlands when everything went back to the way it was. But I feel like that's when the seed was planted. Throughout the years, I traveled a lot and I came back to Bali a couple times. And when the accident happened pretty early on, I felt it had always been in the back of my mind. But when I started to realize this is actually my invitation to radically change my life and myself. And then Bali became this, okay, as soon as I'm able to, as soon as I feel well enough to go back to Bali, I will go back to Bali. And I don't know for how long, I don't know what I'm going to do there, but it became this thing that kept me going and motivated. Like, okay, if I feel good enough, I need to be there. That's where I'm going to go. And so that's what I did.
It's like a little seed was planted. Even then, there was that inkling of, why am I living this way? It was almost like a preview of what was to come, but it wasn't a big enough push for you to make any changes because it was everything you were supposed to be doing. I think that is also really helpful to hear. Part of the problem prior to the accident was that striving and pushing, doing all the things and doing it all perfectly. All of that was coming from more of that wounded place, but it was like, again, getting the right results in the world. And that can become confusing for us as humans, where our wounded selves are so adapted to survival that they are really successful at getting things done. And so that can lead to a lot of success or just having all the right things, because that survival mode is like, what is everything I need to survive and be successful in this certain way?
Yeah.
And so it can feel really confusing when we get sick or when whatever it is that shakes up our reality and is everything has to change. How you're approaching everything has to change. It got me to this place. And so again, it's that reevaluation of, who am I really? What do I really want? If I was really in alignment with that person, what would life really look like? And it's that saying of like, how you do something is how you do everything, or how you do anything is how you do everything, because your healing work initially was in that same energy of I'm going to do all the things and do it perfectly. But then it sounds like you slowly came to this place of having to slow down. I guess what I'm hearing from your story is there was a lot of intuition, but you were really being mindful. You were trying different things, but there was always this sense of Western medicine's not really going to work. Or, this isn't the right modality. I have to slow. And was that easy for you, or was it a lot of hard lessons as you were going through the healing work? I'm hitting another wall. What's going on? What's wrong with me? Or was it obvious where you had to make changes and pivots?
It felt obvious in a way. Like you said, my intuition was really taking over. And I think I had always had that intuition, even growing up, even when I was very young. I always had this sense of the way we're doing life, this just doesn't make sense. There's something wrong here. But I also was in this environment where I did not have any examples of anyone doing it differently. This confusion, there was always this tension between what I was truly feeling intuitively and on the inside, and what I was being asked to do to function in the world I was being brought up into. The post-concussion syndrome, they took out the external world. I could no longer be in the external world. And I noticed how when all of those impulses, all of that input fell away, how strong my intuition actually was, how that inner voice actually was. So the silence, it didn't feel silent at all, because I felt like I suddenly had access to this inner wisdom and this inner intelligence that was just guiding me along and telling me where to go and what to do and what not to do. So it felt almost in a way very natural to me, more natural than striving and trying to keep up with the world. But of course, at some point, I had to go back into the world because it's also just part of life. So that's when that exploratory dance of, okay, how do I stay connected to what I'm feeling and to my intuition while being also connected to the world around me, the people in my life, and how are we going to live this life with this newfound knowing?
Yeah, and that example you gave of going out into the world, practicing that and feeling in your system, what am I capable of? Where's that boundary? Like that ebb and flow. That's it, right? That's how our bodies want us to be in relationship with it. That intuitive listening, connecting. Our bodies are so wise. And we had talked at the beginning of what's the thing we really want to hammer home in this episode. And it's the intelligence of the body, right? And how if we can be in that kind of listening place with it, it gives us so much information without us having to do anything. It can really give us that. And that's where our intuition is, right? Is in our body. It's like that gut feeling. It's not a brain consciousness thing. I think the brain is interpreting the body's signals, but it's not coming from the brain. And so it's that beautiful dance of how can I listen to my body and trust where it feels off. And yeah, I think what you had said is so common for so many of us. I know I relate to it, that feeling of the way I was being raised and how I was being like conditioned to show up in the world. There was that inner tension, right? But you just override it, and it's almost like you just learn to live with it. When you start to shift out of it, it's like you were right there all along. We override. And as soon as you stopped that override, it was like, here you are. Okay, now that you're listening, here's all the things you need to know, which is I think that's so true and accessible for everyone, right? If we can set aside that conditioning, which is essentially what healing and deprogramming the childhood conditioning and the traumatic experiences and the way our nervous system has been programmed to show up in the world, making space for that more intuitive connection and communication to be happening, that intuitive voice and the wisdom comes forward. But it's not always easy. It's hard, especially if life is still pushing us to show up in a certain way that doesn't feel conducive to who we truly are. Like you had said, you had never taken a yoga class. This was not your worldview at all. Is that fair to say, the way that you now think about the body and health and all of that? Or was there some inkling of that prior to this accident happening?
I thought I was very connected to my body. Yeah. In the sense that I was always very physically active. I was always working out, practicing yoga in a different way. I was always moving my body. I loved to be outside. But everything I was doing came from a very high intensity place. And why I was actually able to lift those super heavy weights was because I was very good at just ignoring the pain.
Wow.
Pushing through a boundary. The only way to go that hard and to have those super high intensity workouts, at some level you have to do some kind of numbing or tuning out or pushing through. That's the kind of body connection I was used to. There was always some kind of relationship happening there. So it didn't come out of left field, so to say. But again, it was really about rewiring that relationship and coming at it from an entirely different angle. And with what you were saying before, how it's not easy to do that in this world, I feel like it's important to acknowledge that we don't live in a world that supports healing in this way. Even for me, for my experience as well, that all the resources around me, everything was so aimed at getting me back into the life I was living before, like getting me back to my old job. Like, what do we have to do? How can we help you to become who you were before? So back to the way it was. And that's the world we're living in. So it makes so much sense that it feels so hard to do it a different way. Yeah, I just felt like it was important to add that, because sometimes this conversation can also make us feel like, oh, I'm doing healing wrong. It's another thing that you're getting wrong or that you're not doing the right way. But environment and the world and society and culturally, generationally, all of those things play such a big role as well. Like, it's not just individual,
No.
obviously.
Yeah, 100%.
It's important to remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, because we think of functionality as health, right? That's what we equate to healthy, and like worth and value is like, how functional are you? That's your worth. Adding value to the world is, what are you producing? How much money are you? People who are, first of all, who get sick, right? There's already this like stigma of not being valuable or not being able to function, so you're not contributing. That in and of itself throws a lot in our face to work through in terms of those inner stories and traumatic experiences. But then, yeah, like coming back into the world, again, yesterday, not to keep referencing this, but the conversation is so fresh and relevant to what we're talking about. She was diagnosed with cancer, and she beat cancer, and her doctor called her and was like, "You're cancer free." And she was like, "Oh my gosh, what do I do? What does that mean? It's such a huge thing." He literally said, "Just go back to life, get back into your life, because that's it, right? You're healthy now, get back into the world and do what you were doing." And obviously his intention was good, right? It was just like, now you can just live again. But it's that slight disconnect of what was life doing that led to this place in the first place. How did it contribute to or lead us there in the first place? And so, yeah, it is this ongoing conversation that I'm having with everyone I talk to on this podcast of just like, how do we recognize this deep truth of what it actually means to heal and how that feels to embody that new self and to be in alignment with ourselves and the rhythm and the rate at which we want to move in the world according to our body and our own makeup, versus how that contradicts what the world demands of us. Some of us don't have that choice. Like, we have to go back to our corporate job or do certain things that are contrary to what our body is calling us toward. It's really challenging in that way. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. What I'm coming to is it's about finding those pockets of where, like, how can we bring that in as much as we can, and then working to exist in the challenges at the same time. It's not all or nothing, right? It's how can we pull as much of that into our life as we can. But what does that feel like or look like for you? What are your thoughts on that?
For me, there was a grief process around coming to terms with the feels lifting and actually seeing what this world is and how it's not working, not necessarily being able to do something about that immediately. There was not a plan, like, give me steps A, B, C, and then we'll fix this.
Yeah.
So just having to come to terms with the world we're living in right now. And there was, for me, and still, there's just a lot of grief around that. Oh, that gutted feeling of, oh my gosh, how did we get here? And how did we let it get this far? And then using that as fuel to, like you said, okay, how can I make small differences in my life that are going to keep on bringing myself back to that sense of safety? What do I need to keep the connection to my body and to my purpose and to that life force energy that we were talking about before, that spiritual connection? And just starting to find little ways, little pockets, little glimmers that just keep reminding me of, okay, yes, this is the world we live in. And I also have agency over my body and what I'm doing. I'm not completely powerless. I'm also not a victim of this world. And there's actually so much opportunity here to facilitate change for me and for the people I work with. It's this constant dance between seeing the truth and being like, oh,
100%. And I think bodies are intelligent. There's nothing we need to fix. We need to change the story and the paradigm. This is all about paradigm shifting. I think it is about embodying this new way of being in the world, because nothing changes if nothing changes. If we just continue to embody the old way and show up in the old way, it needs to change. We have to poke cracks in it and show up differently or push against it. That's how it starts to shift. We have to embody that change that we want to see. Shifting that paradigm of how it has been doesn't mean it has to keep going this way, especially teaching kids how to be embodied and stay connected to their intuition, not forcing them. I think a lot of parents are moving into alternative schooling situations where they're not forced to sit in a chair for 5 hours and you can only pee when there's a pee break, right? It's these more kind of helping kids stay connected more early on to their body. So things are changing, shifts are happening. It's trying to stay in that space of both and of how can we embody that change and be in that space of shifting that paradigm while also it's like not fitting it into the old paradigm, but letting them coexist and be uncomfortable with each other so that the change starts to take place. I would love to hear a takeaway message or the ultimate thing that you learned from this whole experience and this healing journey you went on. What did this teach you in terms of bodies and illness and brokenness and fixing and all of that sort of thing? What was the takeaway?
I think the biggest thing is that the body is so wildly intelligent, like way more intelligent than our minds will ever be able to comprehend. I'm such a big fan of how the whole healing conversation and conversation around trauma and how this is all on the rise and coming at it still from this lens. Okay, if you do ABC, then you will heal and everything will be great again. So changing that is not honoring the body's intelligence. That is still telling the body that something is wrong and needs to be changed. And I believe that any kind of symptoms, any kind of illness, like you say, sacred illness, it is this invitation to look to, it's the invitation to break the pattern that got us there in that space. And there is so much wisdom in things like anxiety or dissociation, all those symptoms, what we now say nervous system states, and how can we calm down and regulate our nervous system. It's not to say that's wrong or that it can never be helpful. Let's not forget the intelligence and the wisdom in those symptoms, because they're telling you a story. They're trying to let you in on the secret of life. There's such a valid reason for why your body is responding the way it's responding. And that doesn't mean that's comfortable or that's pleasant or that you can say, oh, this sucks, or it's not that. No, there's a lot we can learn.
Yes, I wrote this down in my notes. The invitation is to break the pattern that got us here. It's everything. It's this invitation to pull us in and pull us deeper. I think one of the biggest paradigm shifts is that our suffering holds the deepest invitation and capacity for transformation and change. I think I say this on every episode, but it bears repeating every time. We're not going to really question things when they feel good and when they're going well. Why would we throw it all up and ruin everything or change it all? We're not going to do that when things are good. And so again, how can we sit with this idea of suffering is this sacred opportunity? I love what you said, to discover the secret of life. It's like trying to let you in on this secret. There's so much more here. Follow that suffering and trust it and lean into it. And you can hate it, you can hurt, you can have anger, you can have grief. All of that is actually very important, right? I think a lot of our healing is around allowing those things to be felt and to not be okay with things and to grieve the loss of things or to feel resentful of how certain things worked out. All of that is very sacred and vital and human. I feel like the suffering that we experience is calling us deeper into our humanness. And by doing so, we come more alive. I think ultimately that is the path.
Yeah. And it's also going to, the more your capacity is going to expand, the more you're also going to be able to experience that plural truths kind of thing. Like multiple things can be true at the same time. You can be angry and feel grateful. You can be sad, but also be excited about the path you're on. There's so many things that can be true at the same time. For me, that was a big thing that I had to learn as well, because that's not something I was taught
Right.
at all. It was very black and white. So yeah, coming to find out that there are so many shades of gray that are actually pretty colorful shades of gray that are in between, and they all have a place in our experience.
So beautiful. So well said. Yes, that's it, right? That's the goal, is to make space for all of the experience of humanity and human life, and to move out of those extremes that I think survival mode puts us into, because that's necessary to survive, is to have a focus and an all or nothing way of getting through something. The trials and tribulations we go through help us to get to a place where we actually get to experience deeper humanness on the other side of it, because that suffering is what brings us deeper into it. And not that I would ever wish any of the experiences we go through in life on anyone. And what else can we do with them at this point but to try to learn from them and let them be teachers and help alchemize us and bring them into deeper relationship with ourselves and in the world.
Yeah.
I love this so much. Thank you for this, like so many little nuggets of wisdom and truth in how you say things and phrase things. And your journey is so incredible. And it's interesting too, because it's not like a chronic illness in the sense that we think of, right? It's not like an autoimmune disease. It was an accident. But like you said, there were things in place prior to. It's not like everything was like beautiful, amazing, and then an accident. It's this really powerful example of how it can be really anything that throws a wedge into how things are and interrupts that pattern: illness, injury, accident, suffering. I think the key word is suffering. When that comes knocking on the door, it's a wake-up call. And I'm so grateful that you answered it. And again, I said this before we hit record, but just so grateful that you applied to come on the podcast. I'm touched by everyone who wants to come on here and share their story, because it's always from this place of, this was an incredible experience and everyone needs to know this truth, right? I want people to know how to be in this different relationship, because this is everything. This is where the richness and beauty of life really lives. So thank you for that goodness in your heart that wanted to come on here and share your story with us. And thank you for all the beautiful ways in which you describe this journey and everything you learned from it. It's been an amazing pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me on, and it's truly a pleasure to share.
Thank you. Enjoy your beautiful day in Bali.
I will. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Sacred Illness Podcast. If you find this information shared here inspirational and educational, please share it with those you think would benefit from this work. To take this work deeper yourself, check out our website, www.aurorasomatic.com, where you can explore our coaching, community, and course options. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel, where new content is coming out all the time, intended to inspire, awaken, and help you deepen your relationship with yourself, your life, and your world. We'll see you next time.